Hey everyone, today we're going to be taking a look at this, the 8600 GT Magic by Asus. So join me after the intro to find out how this 14-year-old to see my review of this now 14-year-old 512MB equipped card. The Tesla architecture-based 8600 GT launched back on April 17th, 2007, same time as the version I'm reviewing today did, the Asus Magic version of the card. It was based on the 80nm fabrication process and came packing 289 million transistors, with a core clock of 540 MHz and a shader clock of 1190 MHz. The 512 MB of DDR2 memory that the Magic comes with sat on a 128-bit bus and ran at 400 MHz, 14% over the 350 MHz that the reference model of the 8600 GT ran at, which would give it the edge in performance over what the standard card could manage. The card came packing 32 shading units, with 16 texture mapping units, 8 ROPs, and a L2 cache size of 32 kilobytes. There was also support for DirectX 11.1 as well, although only up to a feature level of 10, so while it has technical support for DirectX 11, it doesn't really support anything higher than DirectX 10. And the rest of the system we're going to be using to benchmark the 8600 GT today features a Ryzen 7 2700 overclocked to 4 GHz on a MSI B450 Gaming Plus Max motherboard. I'm also using 16 GB of 3200 MHz DDR4 RAM running at CL16 timings. I'm using Windows 10 Pro 64-bit for the OS, running from an SSD, with the games themselves running from a mechanical hard drive. Grip Combat Racing is an indie game developed by Caged Element and published by Wired Productions. It runs well enough to be playable and enjoyable. I'm having to run the game at 720p with a 25% resolution scaling to get playable performance, so in actuality, the game is running at only 320 by 180, and with the low resolution comes problems with even reading the text in some parts of the game, although I noticed during testing that after a race or so, the text seems to render at a higher resolution and becomes far more readable. That aside, the game itself is still playable. FPS is below 30 the whole way through the first career tournament, but despite that, performance is still acceptable. The FPS figures do show though that there will be some potentially noticeable stutters, although when you're really into the race, you're unlikely to actually notice them. Overclocking to 702 MHz on the core, with a 1566 MHz shader clock and 475 MHz on the memory, the game can maintain FPS in the mid-20s to mid-30s in races, with some hitches remaining at times. Crysis doesn't run great, even at 640 by 480. There's noticeable frame time inconsistency throughout the test, which improves a lot with the overclock, but it still isn't perfect. The stuttering is most noticeable when turning the camera around and looking at your surroundings, which is most true for the overclock, as the difference in stutter when moving the camera around to when you're not doing it is far more noticeable. There's also some quite noticeable hitches every few seconds when walking between the North Korean command post and the Luskaz call area of the map as well. This was also true for the overclocked test as well. Overall though, the game does perform far better when overclocked. Rocket League is a difficult one to run as it no longer supports DirectX 9 like it used to. I managed to get it running though by emulating DirectX 11 through the DirectX control panel, which comes as part of the Windows 8.1 software development kit. As expected though, the game runs really poorly. I was not able to run the game in full screen mode as this caused the game to set itself to a resolution of 1:1, making it unplayable. So I had to run it in either windowed or borderless windowed mode at 960 by 540, with the resolution scale inside the game's configuration file set to 25%, giving a real resolution of only 240 by 135. This makes the ball nearly impossible to see, although technically I was still able to play it. I could only play it offline though, as I had to launch the game directly from the executable file, as trying to launch it through Epic ignores the DirectX control panel settings, making the game impossible to launch on the 8600. So no Epic means no online play. That aside, it runs terribly as expected. There are numerous slowdowns throughout, mostly in fast-paced moments, which is often in this kind of game. The frame times are horrifically inconsistent, leading to stuttering throughout gameplay, and overall the game is really uncomfortable to play. Overclocking does smoothen things out a little, but performance is effectively the same stock or overclocked. I couldn't benchmark GTA 5 at all due to the problems I had. I set the game to run at 640 by 480 by changing the resolution in the game's configuration file, where I also disabled shadows too. A tip I picked up from Budget Builds Official, who you should also check out, so thanks for that. I then further reduced the resolution to 320 by 240 by setting frame scaling in game to 0.5. Still, with these settings there were major problems with what I call input locking, where you'll press W to start driving forward, for example. Take your finger off the key, but the game takes ages to register that you're actually not pressing the key anymore, so the input has effectively locked for a while, making driving completely impossible a lot of the time. This meant I couldn't even drive through the city at stock, and repeatedly failed the mission where you have to chase Laszlo when overclocked as well. Adventure Pals is a fun little adventure platformer by indie dev Massive Monster, released by indie publishers Armour Games on the PC and Super Rare Games Limited on Switch. The idea of the game is that your dad has been kidnapped or dadnapped by someone as part of his evil plan to turn elderly people into hot dogs. Yes, hot dogs. I've been really enjoying it myself and thought it would be fun to try here. The game runs fantastically, so well in fact that the 8600 GT doesn't even hit maximum usage. It sits between 60 to 80% throughout. This is because the game has a hard limit of 60 FPS and a fixed resolution of 1080p. This, coupled with very limited in-game graphics settings, means that turning shaders off within the settings is all that is required to get the game running well. There are some slightly noticeable hitches throughout, although that is caused by the game's VSync desperately trying to keep the game at the 60 FPS cap. So overall, I'm actually really impressed with how well this little card did in some of the games, namely Crysis and Adventure Pals as well. With Crysis specifically, at 640 by 480, it had its problems as I talked about, but it can still run the game to a playable level at that resolution, at least in the island mission. It may differ as you actually progress through the game. Adventure Pals, though, that actually ran a lot better than I was expecting. That's a reasonably recent game. Obviously it's not a AAA game, but that's kind of besides the point. It's a reasonably recent game, and even at stock, the 8600 GT Magic can run it perfectly fine. The issues I talked about with the sort of brief hitches now and again, that seemed to only be caused by the fact that the game was desperately trying to keep the frame rate at 60 FPS, so you kept on having spikes above and below that. So overall, AAA games are kind of not really a thing that you should really be bothering trying to run on this card, but if you're looking at more sort of much older games, or even sort of more modern indie games, or just games that aren't the sort of big AAA games, then you can actually get away with this. No problem at all, as you saw in the likes of Adventure Pals. So, to round out the video today, I'd like to give shout outs to Patreon supporters Shadow in the Void and Matisterak for helping to make all of this possible. You'll also be seeing a list of my other patrons on the screen right now. If you'd also like to become a patron, you can do so through patreon.com/benchytests, where from as little as $2 per month, you will gain early access to all of my videos 3 days before the public do. If, however, you'd prefer not to become a patron, but would still like to support me in some way, financially anyway, you can do so through my Ko-fi at But yeah, you can support me through that as well. Although I don't want you to feel obligated and to supporting me financially, because just the watching the videos is enough support for me. But yeah, like I said, just watching my videos is enough. So thank you again for that, and hopefully I'll see you next time.